Hello, I'm Peter.
And I'm Harry.
And this is Man Up,
Man Down.
the podcast where we talk about growing up in the 21st century as a young person
Our experiences with mental health.
and the things that we have to go through as young people in this modern day and age.
We'll be discussing several topics over the course of, I think, we're going to
About 8 weeks.
about 8 weeks we're looking at. And the idea is that we draw our own conclusions, I guess, at the end of each topic that we discuss, kind of figure out for ourselves. We're learning, aren't we, whilst we're doing this?
So, Harry, week 5.
We're here.
We're here back again outside Age UK again.
Yeah, same place.
Same one as the, which one did we record here? The education one, wasn't it, with Charlie?
I believe so, yeah.
Sadly, no guest today, which is it's okay. I mean, I think because we're getting nearest Christmas now, people are getting busy
But we have got other
Yeah.
guests lined up, haven't we, though? We've got quite a good number of people, actually, that want to be involved, which is great.
Yeah, we've had an interest from a few people, but I think for the next, I think probably till the end of Series 1 there'll be no more guests. I think this is kind of it now for Series 1, which is fine. You know, you can get used to our voices.
I guess, just very quickly before we review the week, of course this is a mental health podcast, of course called Man Up, Man Down, but of course, it's for everybody. But we do want to focus men's mental health because of the stigmatisation against speaking out. Now, I just want to quickly, I guess, give a brief tribute to Stephen Boss, or others might know him as Twitch, or you might still not know him, but he was a DJ, and he was from, he began his career on So You Think You Can Dance. That's where he gained fame in the world of dance, I guess, in America. Worked with some big musicians such as Justin Timberlake and many more. And you probably, if you do know who Twitch is, he was most popular as a DJ on The Ellen Show. He was very close with Ellen DeGeneres. Obviously, she filmed her, I think, last series recently. And he very sadly passed away through suicide very recently to recording this podcast. So I guess this is why we do it, isn't it? For I know he's got celebrity status, and of course, it's different, but again, he's a human.
It could be any one of us, couldn't it? Really, it could be any of our mates, or it could be.
Well, the thing that shocked me, Pete, is that he appeared on every TikTok that I saw, on every video on Ellen. He seemed so full of life, so joyful. He literally 5 days prior to his suicide was celebrating his 9th anniversary with his wife. He has children. He has a great family. He always claimed at the Ellen Show that how grateful he was that they'd given him a family and a home and a place he felt he could be himself and express himself with dance and everything. It's just tragic. It really is. And the fact is I know that Ellen, being as close and how much she loved him, she would have been there, gone to the moon and back for him if all he said was help, And I can't speak because I don't know the circumstances, but it would appear that he kept this battle private from even the ones he loved the most, his children, his wife, maybe to protect them. Who knows? I know a lot of people don't want to project their troubles onto others, but what we want to kind of say is, sorry to ramble, is we it's not projecting trouble to speak up on mental health, is it? It's so important, because when you bottle emotion up inside, especially over a long period of time, it can drive you to a point that you can become suicidal. And obviously, I said I've experienced that myself in the past. So speak. That's why we do this. Is to talk about our own experiences. Yeah, absolutely. But also, like you say, because we want to help others, even if it's only one person listening to the podcast. If it makes a difference, if it helps in any way, then
even if nobody's listening, though, it's good just for us two to talk, isn't it, and get it off our own chests between ourselves. Even if we don't have a single listener,
Absolutely.
it's good for us to. It's just a good way, a good excuse for us to talk to each other for an hour a week or 2 hours a week.
I've said, haven't I, on podcasts in the past, that it's kind of like we're learning as we do it as well. At the same time, but we're still learning for ourselves, and that. So it's great. It's a real journey. But yeah, rest in peace to Stephen Boss.
He was the boss,
aka Twitch. He was a lovely. He seemed like, obviously I don't know him, but he just seemed so full of life, talented. He had a beautiful wife and children. It's really, really sad. But and of course we're talking about someone there with celebrity status. Of course, there's so many others that right now as we speak are going through the same thing, and Just to think about that's horrible, isn't it, really? To think that right now, as we're speaking, that someone may be at that point.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, maybe on a bit of a cheerier note, maybe we should go on to today's...
Is it a cheerier note? Our topic today is fears, isn't
fears,
it?
which is a topic that I've kind of had at the back of my mind to do pretty much since we started the podcast. I kind of had grief, mental health, and fears as like the main three that I was kind of interested in talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think that fears, okay, it's, you know, like grief, it's not a mental health illness, but I think it can be the cause of a lot of mental health illnesses, whether it be anxiety because of your fear of something, whether it be, in terms of grief, that could cause depression. These things can obviously lead to mental health illnesses.
Yeah.
And like grief, which I guess is something that we all go through fears. We've all got things that we're scared of or things that we are dispassionate about. But before we go on to the topic, how's your week been?
My week has been really good, actually. Really good. I'm really enjoying my progression with yourself at the gym.
Yeah, we went just today. We've been for a good.
The reason I keep talking about the gym is every week is because I go every week, don't I, with you, and it's got such a positive. Yeah. It's like we both just feel more energized after, don't we? We both, you'd agree, we both feel more vibrant and more, optimistic about the day, I think, after gym, because it just sets you up, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
I don't think there's any better feeling really than feeling healthy. Because I've experienced both. I've experienced where I've been completely unhealthy, where I've been not eating at all, not sleeping at all, and then just going out and drinking loads of alcohol.
Kind of same. I mean, obviously I don't drink, but like there's weeks, there have been weeks in the past and months in the past where, like, I've been having a lot of fast food, or I've been to McDonald's a lot, or I've kind of relied a lot on fast food. Whereas recently I've been pretty good. I mean, I've not had McDonald's since October. I think Halloween was the last time I had McDonald's.
Yeah.
This is, it's the 16th of December today. I haven't had any fizzy drinks since Halloween either. So these little things, they do make you feel a little bit better when you can see, and when you can see progress as well when you're in the gym. I'm starting to see, I think, a little bit of difference in my arms.
That's the thing, yeah. I think with the gym and physical fitness especially is you want to see the appearance of this, of your gains, don't you? Like I guess the physical appearance, but I think that's the thing where.
I think that's why it can be so off-putting though for some people, is that they think it's going to happen overnight, but it does take time.
But that's the beauty of it. Is it's like anything. We've talked about having distraction when you're feeling low, and having things to. When we say distraction, though, yes, it is a distraction in essence, but it's also something to look forward to. So like hobbies, different hobbies and interests. It doesn't have to be gym necessarily. There's lots of ways, but for us,
I guess something that takes your mind off whatever it is you again anxious about, which is, I guess, kind of related to today's topic of fears. But one thing I would say about the gym as well is, and I guess it would be the same as losing weight or whatever your goal is. And we'll do a full podcast about goals in, I guess, about 2 weeks' time, before the new year. But one thing about goals is, it can be quite disparaging. Is that a word? Disparaging.
Yeah.
If you don't see the progress straight away, but I think the moment you start to see that progress, you start to see something developing, whether it be, your muscles are better, or you've lost a bit of weight, or whatever it may be, whatever your goal is in life, when you start to see the progress, it's a beautiful thing. But I would just say, hang in there. Even if you're not seeing progress straight away, it might be a few weeks or a few months with whatever your goal is. Hang in there,
and you will.
And you can with anything, you can have setbacks, and you mustn't let the setbacks get to you. So a big goal that I'm trying to master at the moment is waking up early every morning. Now, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have to say I've not been that good at it. I've kind of been waking up a lot later than my 6:30 target in the morning. So, for example, today I don't think I got up till about 9 or 10. But these setbacks happen, and at the end of the day, me waking up late, does it cause any massive issues in my life? Not really. I had a bit of a lie-in, probably did me a bit of good, to be honest.
I think it's about your mood, isn't it? And when you've got routine.
And you feel like you've had a more productive day, because, for example, today I woke up at 10, we were meeting at 11 to go to the gym, and, if I'd woken up earlier than 10, I could have had a bit of time to watch a bit of TV, or do some reading, or, sort some files out on my hard drive, or whatever it may be, whatever mundane job I have to do, I could have done. Yeah. But because I didn't, it was like, wake up at, I think it was about 10:30 or whatever, wake up, get changed in a rush, rush out the door, come meet you. Whereas I could have had a bit more time just to relax and do something I enjoy, and then go and meet you.
I mean,
which I also enjoy.
For me, from my experiences, there is a there is a definite link between a lack of productivity and a lack of sleep.
Yeah,
they both just work hand in hand.
How's your sleep? Because I know, like, you know, we both to an extent have gone through periods where we've woken up pretty late. But I think the major difference between the two of us is that I don't tend to go to sleep that late, whereas I think you do, don't you? You go to sleep quite late at night. So how's your sleeping pattern now? Is it?
It's not good, but I'm not going to claim that I'm an insomniac or anything like that. It's not like it's something that I'm. You know, it's all self-inflicted. I believe that, you know, like I say, being on the phone, and just the length of time that I've kind of trained my mind to think about, to think as if I would throughout the day with all that energy and that. I should be the opposite when it gets to that time, but I'm not, because I've trained my mind for so long to feel awake. So again, it's just. The great thing is, though, is it's not something that's, you know, conditional. It's not something that I can't solve or I've got for life now. It's something that I can definitely do something about. And the big thing that I always say is, especially as someone like myself that, you know, has got a lot of mental health stuff going on, is it's helped me so much develop to only worry about the things that I believe I can influence.
Yeah.
You know, the things that I can't. We, plural, all of us, we've got a choice. We can either choose to, you know, give all our time to things that we can't do anything about and just worry ourselves sick, or we can think, well.
Do you think sometimes you worry about the wrong things though?
I think people do naturally. I think we do. I think we worry too much about.
Like, another thing I'd say kind of related to that is I think humans, and I think I probably mentioned it on the podcast before, but I think humans as a whole kind of gravitate or focus on the negatives in life.
Yeah.
Which I've been very guilty of. Like, you know, whether there's been like one or two things in the last 12 months that have gone wrong for me, or slightly wrong for me, I'm kind of like thinking about them a lot, but I'm not thinking about the 20, 30 things that have gone right.
Well, that's exactly, like, how many times have I said to you, and when you actually, you know, like, I always said to you, didn't I, because it helped me as well a lot, is writing things down.
Yeah.
Because it just, your brain becomes flustered under emotion, under you know, stress and anxiety. So you can't always comprehend your thoughts in your head the same way you can that if you write things down, it allows you to analyse things a lot more calmly, I think, with a lot more perspective. And like you say, a lot of the times that I always remember a time that you were really, really, you don't mind me sharing, you were really flustered, you were not panicked, but you were
about August.
You were stressed. It was there was a lot going on with uni and moving from your flat.
I was moving out of my flat. Uni was over.
Yeah,
I had other things going on, and I think everything just kind of like
all just kind of built up,
snowballed into one thing.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I was really panicking, and I just phoned you just to kind of distract myself from it. And as I was phoning you, I think it was you that said, you know, write it down what you're worried about. And I wrote down, I think, 6 worries. I probably mentioned this on the podcast before.
I remember. I recall that I told you to kind of like. Prioritise them, rank them, because I think a lot of the times when we're thinking about loads of different worries at once and that, they all seem like the end of the world to us. Whereas when you actually think about it and you rank them, it's
and get some perspective about. Again, you know, I'm moving out of my flat. That's pretty bad. But then think about the positives. I'm moving in with my family again. I get to see my family more regularly, and you know, at the end, they'll probably be cooking for me, and you know, they'll be helping with the cleaning a little bit. So in a way, it's like, yeah, there was a negative to moving out of my flat, but there was also a lot of positives to it. But anyway, so I wrote down these worries, and I've probably spoken about this on the podcast before. But I wrote down all these worries, and I went through them all and thought, hang on, in a year's time, none of these are going to matter.
Yeah,
I'm not going to worry about any of these things in a year's time. You know, uni won't matter because I'll have finished it. You know, moving out of the flat won't matter because I'll have moved out, and everything else,
like jobs as well and stuff like that.
None of it was going to matter, and it kind of relates a little bit to, like, you know, again, I can't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I was at my graduation a few weeks back, there was people there in my kind of class that are already getting like jobs in TV and stuff, and I'm not. And you know, there was a bit of me that was like, oh, I'm really annoyed about that. But then, like, A, there's no rush. You know, people, you know, some people start their careers in their 30s and 40s and still manage to have a really good career.
Yeah.
And B, you know, I can't really feel too annoyed when I'm not putting in loads and loads of effort of applying. Like, I'm applying for stuff, but like, I could always do more.
In fairness, like you say, I mean, that's really good honesty, to be honest. Like, you know, no pun intended. I'm saying, like, I think that with fears, when we when we're feeling anxiety and that, we tend to kind of, it's weird, isn't it? Like we just
compare
speculate.
ourselves as well.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Sorry, yeah, you've helped me there. There was a lot of I used to have a lot of envy, I think, over other people.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety for your future, and that when you start comparing yourself with others. Now, I don't think always it's a bad thing, because if you're doing it, you know, like I guess, you know, like take the gym for example.
Yeah, in a positive way.
Yeah, if we're doing it like we're comparing weight with each other, but we don't do it competitively, do we? We've never been like.
No, if you encourage other people, is that what you're getting at?
What I'm saying is like, for example, I was on the 18s today. You're on the 14s. We've both smashed as well a PB.
Personal best.
A personal best, yeah. So we've both smashed a personal best. We didn't compare. It wasn't like, you know, I was being like.
No, we just complimented each other's success, didn't we?
Yeah, if anything, you know, you were saying to me, it's like, oh well, you've done 4 kg heavy. I said, well, hold on, yeah, but how many reps have you done?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the point is I'm saying with comparing, there can be a lot of inspiration that comes from it, a lot of encouragement, a lot of body positivity, a lot of self-confidence, but there's also negatively this feeling that you're not as good as somebody else, or that you'll never be like somebody else, or, you know, and it can be really damaging psychologically, especially when it comes to like body confidence and that, you know. That's why, you know, some people, they might not want to ever take that leap of faith and join a gym just because they're in fear of it. But the reality is, nobody at the gym is judging. If anything,
they're in fear. That goes into today's topic.
Well, I was going to say, if they were thinking anything about someone walking into the gym, they'd think, good for you.
Yeah,
good for you for being here, for doing something to make a change.
That's the thing, 'cause I remember when I used to, like, when I first joined the gym when I was like 18, 19. Like, I won't lie, all I was kind of doing was walking on a treadmill when I first started off. Like, I wasn't doing weights, and I wasn't even running on the treadmill. Like, I was just pretty much walking. And, like, there was a bit of me that was like, oh, I really hope people aren't laughing at me because I'm just walking on a treadmill. But then I thought to myself, well, walking on a treadmill is better than just sitting at home eating a bag of crisps, watching TV, isn't it?
And the thing is I completely agree. And I think one thing that I think fear dominates is your levels of motivation.
Yeah.
If you're in fear over something, what's the one thing you want to do? Sorry to quiz you, we don't usually do this, but what would you say is the one thing you'd want to do if you fear something?
Stay away from it.
Avoid it. Exactly. You want to avoid it.
Yeah.
That's what we do. It's the classic, you know, fight or flight. But, you know, if we feel under threat from something or someone, of course, naturally we want to avoid. But it's difficult, and like you say, you wouldn't just throw someone in the deep end. If from a therapy point of view, and from what I've worked at in the past, over fears, over phobias, specific phobias that I'll emphasise in a bit, I'll talk about, is that you can't just go straight from 0 to 100. You can't just go straight from, right, you're scared of spiders, so we're going to put you in this pit of tarantulas.
Yeah, but this is the thing that we were talking about, you know, with setbacks, is that you can't expect, and we've spoken about this before in our own lives, like, you can't expect to change your whole life overnight, whether that's sorting your sleeping pattern out or getting the best job in the world. I'm not going to wake up one morning and be Director General of the BBC. It's not going to happen. You know, I'm not going to wake up one morning and suddenly my sleeping pattern's 100% sorted out. It's not going to happen.
But the beauty is, like we've said, same as gym, or same as a lot of other things, is everything's a process, and the main thing is that you are taking the steps, though. For me, for example, all right, obviously needing a new job. If I wasn't applying, wasn't doing anything.
But are you applying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm taking the steps necessary, and I'm not being selective now, and I'm sure, I mean, my goal, I know we're talking about goals on another podcast, but I am determined to get myself back into employment before the end of the new year. Because and it's very ambitious.
Eat your words, Harry.
I probably will. Well, I mean, we'll still be doing the podcast in the new year, so we can compare. It'll be a good time because we'll be talking about goals on that podcast. So we can kind of talk about. It'll be a really good time because at that point,
New Year's Eve, I think
it'll be the end of the year, so we can talk about everything that we've done throughout the year.
That was kind of my aim. Yeah. I thought we could compare how like an end of year celebration.
I guess we've really done well so far. I think on talking about general fear and how fear affects people, generally speaking, from your own.
We kind of segued into how has your week been to fear straight away. We didn't really get introduced to the topic of fears, did we? But you know, should we start by talking about fears and what your own fears are? I mean, do you have any fears?
I guess we've kind of already talked about the fear of the future. I think is a big one.
That's a big one. It's a big one. And okay, we'll start by talking about that one because that's one I was actually had on my list. I've got 5 or 6. I think I've got 5 Five things on the list. So the first one on the list, I guess we should talk about the list now. That the list I've written down. Hopefully, you've got a few of your fears to share. I don't want to be the only one that exposes myself. So it was one of the things on the list. Is basically what is connected to what you've just talked about, which is I guess a fear of the future and a fear of. I've kind of written it down as loneliness. That's what I've written it down as, because I think there's definitely a fear with us at our age, and I know there shouldn't be. I know it's very, very much an irrational fear, but a fear that we're gonna, not get into a relationship or not get married later in life or have kids later in life, not get a good job later in life. There's a massive kind of thing of something that I feel anyway. I'm sure you're the same. A fear of the future.
Yeah.
Are we right in saying that? So is there anything else you want to say about that fear? Or is that it?
No, of course not. Like for me, I'd say with the future, I think it's because I don't know. I've touched on this before. Like I don't know what it is I want to do long term yet.
Yeah.
I've explored the acting. I appreciate it's obviously a very difficult industry to get in and to.
Are you still trying with that then?
I would say, honestly, no, not nowhere near as much as I could have. Obviously, I've got a show reel, but I'm doing nothing with it. So. It's like I could have the best accolades or the best CV in the world.
Is that one?
It doesn't matter if you're not doing anything with it.
We'll talk about goals in the future podcast. But is that one of your goals then to pursue the acting more, or have you kind of completely given up on it?
I wouldn't say I've completely given up on it, but I think acting's something that I need to look at whilst I've got some other form of employment and money. Because again, with acting, unless you're you've got a really good part on a good BBC programme or something, you've not really got consistency with the role. Even with a lot of these great shows like Hollyoaks and that, where they need you for a few episodes, you'll get paid well for it.
It's like I did an interview with an actor a few months ago, and they were telling me that like they were in a few episodes of Doctor Who, which is obviously a pretty big drama to be in, really, a pretty big show to be in, really, for the BBC. And they were in 3 or 4 episodes of that, and they thought, great, I'm going to be famous now, and then they've not had a TV job since.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you'd think something like that would be able to sustain you, but no, it's true. It's a very competitive industry, and in terms of my own career, that's another thing that gives me a lot of anxiety and fear. Is I've chosen a career which is very much freelance led, so you could have a job for 3 weeks and then not have a job for a year.
Yeah.
And not even a job, have a job for 3 weeks. Even a 3-week one's quite hard to get by.
Yeah.
So that is a fear of mine. Is the future in terms of jobs, in terms of relationships as well. You always think, am I going to be single forever, or am I going to be,
Do you know what? I don't think we've really said about that. I think relationships is a big fear that not just not just myself and you perhaps felt, but I think
generation as a whole.
I think a lot of men and women out there.
I know that a lot of people are leaving it a lot later now to kind of settle down, for want of a better word.
Well, it's interesting. I'd obviously never name names, but a good friend of mine I spoke to recently, she suggested that she doesn't feel comfortable with the idea of a relationship anymore, and she's not. I think she's had one prior, but that was quite a long time ago, from what she was telling me, and let's say a long time ago, like a few years ago. But the point is I think people have kind of lost that.
I think probably. I don't know if there's any truth in this, but I think there's probably people have lost trust in relationships. I mean, every generation obviously has its issues, and every generation has their own things going on. But our generation has a big reliance on social media, and I think.
So would you say our generation's harder to maintain a relationship, a healthy relationship?
I don't necessarily think it's harder to maintain a relationship, but I think it's harder to, or it can be harder to trust in a relationship.
Yeah.
I would imagine, because of the amount of distractions there is out there, whether it be. Again, I know we're not the first generation to go clubbing, or the first generation to. We're probably not even the first generation necessarily to have social media, because I would imagine kind of the generation above us, a few years before us, would have had it. But I think it's definitely very dominant in our lives, the reliance on social media and other forms of. I don't know. I think if you wanted to cheat on someone, it's a lot easier to do it nowadays.
I would agree.
So I think our generation, there's a certain level or element of trust lost.
On the flip side, though, you could say though that a lot more people get caught out because of social media these days.
That's true.
Whereas like back when there was no social media, if someone was going to cheat, which of course we want to say we do not agree with, nor would we ever do, but yeah, like I feel like no one's gonna know, will they? Like
No.
back then, and again, that's a big thing. Is a lot of people fear that their fear is over trust. We talk about trust is a big thing.
Yeah, trust is a big thing.
If you can't
whether it be friends or relationships or jobs or anything.
Yeah, whatever it is, trust is huge. I think if you lack trust, then you are naturally going to fear. You'll have anxiety, won't you?
The thing is, a lack of trust can lead to, in my experience, a real lack of self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
The two things are very much connected. And, I mean, just go back to relationships and social media. It can be a great thing for long-distance relationships, for example. Let's not say that social media has no positives. Cause
there's a lot of benefits. There's always pros and cons, aren't there?
But I just think that there's a lot more people our age that, it seems to me, and this is, no research done into this, but it just seems to me that a lot more of our generation struggle with self-esteem, self-confidence, and I think a lot of it comes from a lack of trust, and I think a lot of it comes from social media. And because a lot of things, again, like our careers that we both chosen, a lot of them are a lot harder nowadays than they were.
No, it's very true. It's very true. And I think, like you say, generally speaking, we talked about kind of jobs and as kind of being like the future. I think jobs is a big topic of fears, definitely. And as we've just said there, relationships is a big one. I think, I don't know, I guess to talk about our own experiences, because I've certainly, I think, grown in confidence in terms of mingling with people. I don't just mean in an intimate sense. I mean like just generally speaking in terms of because I obviously never went to university. There was a bit of an X and Y gen gap at my old places of work. I struggled a lot to interact because we didn't have commonalities, or there just wasn't a lot. Could I have done more, perhaps, to I think I was so fixated on my work because I wasn't necessarily comfortable in the role. It was quite difficult, quite advanced for the position I was in. It was very business oriented.
I think that kind of also relates to the rise of technology, and that the generations are a lot more different nowadays.
Well, the thing is,
I would say that I was just going to say that I think that we would have a lot more in common with someone born in 1995 than someone born in 2005, on the whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like our parents can always educate us on stuff that we can't really comprehend without them telling us, whereas we can do the same with our parents. A lot of the times, my parents are very bright people. They're not. I don't want to suggest they're incompetent or anything, but on a computer, for example, they're computer literate. But a lot of the times, I'm having to show them new things or features or apps on a phone just because they've not grown up with that. So they've not, they still kind of don't really know much about it. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think, going back to the fear of the future thing then, do you think that fear is, that particular fear is rational or irrational, would you say?
What, in terms of relationships?
No, just in terms of general fear of the future, whether it be jobs, relationships, friendships.
I think there's a lot of rationality behind jobs because that is essentially what we're going to be doing, like what we'd like to be doing long term. Because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be someone that goes through loads of different jobs and never finds a passion or never finds anything that I could find consistency with. Yeah. So that's the fear for me. Is right now is I'd like to think that perhaps there's something there with the acting, but for me to say that, like we said about the gym, consistency is absolutely everything. The second you drop it, especially in an industry as competitive and fast paced as acting, is you just can't afford to in an industry like that, or you're gonna have no chance of ever getting out there.
That's true. So do you want to, you talk about one of your fears then? We kind of covered fear of the future, which is one that I brought up. So have you got any fears that stand out for you in life, or it can be anything, I guess?
I think the fear of growing up, obviously.
It's kind of fear of the future.
We're grown-ups. Yeah, it is still. You've got a point there, actually. It is kind of still linked to fear of the future. But I think that's what we do. We kind of, you don't really fear the past, do you?
You dwell on the past.
You dwell on the past.
Yeah.
I'd say we fear the present. And I'd say we kind of speculate the future, but that speculation can become big fear.
I don't think that people, on the whole, and I'm guilty of it as much as the next man, I don't think people live in the present as much as we should, do we?
Because we're too fixated on either the past or the future, or both.
Yeah, like even now, it's the 16th of December, and I'm not really taking in the 16th of December. I'm thinking, 9 days till Christmas, and I'm thinking, it's soon New Year, and soon I'll be doing this and this, and I've got other things on the horizon. And
do you know the beautiful thing with the past though is we can learn from it.
Yeah.
You know, we can't learn from the future because it's always a
I think it's good. I think it's good to look forward to the future. I just don't think you can take over your life. You can't wish your life away.
No, exactly.
Because there's a bit of me that's even like, oh, it's Doctor 2's anniversary in November, 60th anniversary, big anniversary in Doctor 2. I hope that's going to be a great month. You know, there's going to be loads of Doctor 2 things coming out that month. But you can't wish your life away waiting for November to come. You've got to enjoy the time you've got. Before
absolutely.
As a, you know, I know it's a stupid example, but it's one example I could give.
Yeah.
So okay, so I'll talk about another on my list, should I? And see what I've got. I'll pick a number from 1 to 4, and I'll talk about.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go 3.
3. Rats.
Rats.
I hate rats. I really hate rats. You could put me in a room with 100 spiders, snakes, whatever, and I'd probably be okay. Like,
do you ever remember my story about rats?
I do. Do you want to tell it on the podcast?
About a rat. Yeah. So I was exploring in Ramsbottom in the I guess how would I say it? It's kind of rural area, forest is it? Would I say forest?
Woods.
Like woodland. That's what I was looking for. Woodland. Yeah. Really good walk in Ramsbottom. If you've ever been, if you've not, rather, I really suggest going. It's a beautiful area. And yeah, I was washing my hands in a lake, in a little stream, and for whatever reason, I felt my hand on something fairly
Squishy.
Yeah. So I think most people in that scenario, especially when you can't acknowledge what it is, would probably fling their hand away and run a mile. But I decided to grab the object and lift my hand out of the water, just out of pure curiosity. And I was holding a deceased rat. So
should have mentioned from the podcast about grief.
well, all I can say is one fear I've always had is paranoia over getting ill.
Yeah.
And I've been always kind of like a bit.
Well, there we are. Then when we talk about fear, you should have brought that up.
Well, I have now.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, no. It's one thing. So after that, honestly, I always joke about the time that because we'd gone to a restaurant after in the evening, and I must have spent about 45 minutes in the toilet just washing my hands repeatedly, just scrubbing. I was thinking of the plague. I was thinking of oh god.
It's I don't know what it is. You know,
antivirus and everything. I just no.
Because like I say, people. It tends to be that people have a real fear of spiders. And on the whole, I don't. You know, I'm not saying that. You know, if you've got massive tarantula in my hands, I'm sure. I'm sure I'd be scared.
I heard something interesting. It's about like how our minds have been developed to think about 8 legs and like it because you know we've only got 4 limbs. They've got 8 and
they've got more
these
than
little. It's just I don't know. It's like spiders are scary. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say I'm. I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm arachnophobic necessarily, but let's just say. If it was my job to remove a spider, I'd rather give that responsibility to somebody else.
No, I don't. Yeah, like I say, if you put a massive spider in my hands, I'm sure I would be terrified. I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't. But in terms of something that I think about a lot and something that I genuinely am terrified of, rats, I don't know. I don't even know what it is. There's something about them.
Well, I was just going to ask. One thing I always like to ask when people talk about their fears is why.
It's
or
the teeth.
How so,
I think it's the teeth. I think it's how dirty they are. I think it's the tails. I think it must be the tails mostly because
never seen Ratatouille, mate.
Yeah, it must be the tails because is it hamsters that don't have tails and they're basically rats, aren't they? And they're not scary.
Yeah, they're considered I don't know if it's an actual category of animal, rodents or it might be rodents. Yeah, I don't know, but same as like voles and shrews, mice. I think squirrels actually go under the same bracket as rodents.
Pigeons.
I'm not sure actually about pigeons. Birds.
I think it's weird as well because I've got a big fear of rats, and I don't know necessarily where it came from. I've seen rats in the wild when I've been on walks, and I've always found them pretty scary. But the weirdest thing for me is that there's literally an episode of Doctor Who, and you know I hate to bring up Doctor Who on the podcast. We've had complaints about it, but there's an episode of Doctor Who where the monster is literally a giant rat. It's from the 70s, and like, why does that not scare me? Because that's something that you would have thought would scare me, but it doesn't.
Well, a lot of people's fears, especially on animals, or you know, like people that have fears of dogs, for example, have had an experience from childhood. I think they call it schema in psychology. Is you experience this from childhood, forming fears, and when you're in adulthood, some lifelong, unless they're like treated with a lot of cognitive behavioural therapy, etc. You know, if you been bitten as a dog as a kid, or you've been stung by a wasp or something, you're gonna carry that fear, no doubt. I mean, I would say I'm pretty flustered around a bee or a wasp. I can't lie. I'm not sure whether I'd call it like a.
Again, they're something that never really scared me. Bees and wasps. I know a lot of people again.
Do you know what I think it is? Perhaps with rats, maybe you haven't reflected on, is that I think it's the idea that they're quite sporadic, aren't they? You don't really see rats often, but I think that kind of constitutes more fear in a sense. Because it's kind of like you're waiting to see one, aren't you? I bet you're on a walk in woodlands or whatever, and you're expecting to see a rat.
I do remember walking. I do a walk called the Knob End Walk, or what I call the Knob End Walk, because there's a place called Knob End.
It genuinely is, actually. We're not being rude there, folks. Like,
there's a place called Knob End.
It is a very good walk as well, isn't it? Long walk.
It's quite a long walk. I think it's about 16 miles. But towards the end of the walk, you have to go through this kind of... There's like only one path you can really take towards the end. And there's a metal fence, and on the other side there's like
I remember what you mean. Yeah.
There's a like what do you call it? Where you know, like on Wally, where they crush the rubbish into little boxes.
Yeah, like a
garbage.
Yeah. I know what you
rubbish
mean.
place.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I have seen rats there. I would say at least twice, just bathing in sort of the kind of water.
Like, sewage water.
Well, I don't even know if it's sewage water, but some sort of stream.
Well, it's not going to be clean, is it? Yeah.
No. Yeah. So yeah. Pretty terrifying.
I wouldn't say I fear rats necessarily, but I mean, I can't really say that when I've held one, but incidentally. But I
was walking through the dark and I remember seeing it once and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
So, I think it's more the idea of, like, I don't mind them if, like, I don't think I'd even be scared of them if they were in a cage or if they were away from me. I think it's just the idea of them being near me. Like, if I was walking along and one was, like, next to my foot when I'm walking along. Or if I put my hand on something and there's one kind of comes up to my hand.
I would say, on the subject of, I guess, fear with animals, because it's quite a good topic, actually.
Yeah.
I would say, in the same sense that one would fear a lion, I fear dogs. In the sense that domestic dogs...
That was actually one of my fears, dogs.
But the thing is, right, is because there's certain owners out there in the UK, and I've heard the stories and I've seen graphic images as well, things I can't even get out of my head sometimes, of poor people, innocent people that have been ripped apart by pit bulls and that, and all these dog breeds. And I don't know my dog breed, so when I see an owner and I see a dog off the lead, and I don't know the owner, I don't know, because a lot of the times it's not the dogs, it's the owners and how they it's in the same way as like people. If a parents bring up a child badly and they beat him and then he becomes violent when he's older, it's the same way with a dog.
A lot of times I feel like little dogs are actually more violent than big dogs.
I love dogs, like, don't get me wrong, domestic dogs, absolutely love them, you know.
I don't.
But no, I do, genuinely. Dogs that I know I can trust, but the problem is I don't know the owners half the time. You don't know what they're like, you know. I fear getting bitten by a dog whenever I see them in public with owners, because a lot of the times you just don't know.
Well, dogs is one of the ones on my list, and for my childhood and I guess most of my teenage years as well, dogs was like the biggest fear I could ever have had. Like, it was a big issue, genuinely. Like, I remember once when my grandparents took me on a walk to Burrs Country Park.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I think there's a bit that's it's got a kind of, I guess, reservoir, is that the right word for it?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The bit with all the flowing water.
Yeah.
And there was a dog that came up to us, and I was so terrified of it that I was like climbing up on the rails to get away from the dog. And I would have genuinely, like, if the dog had got any closer, I probably would have gone off the rails into the water, because I was...
You would have felt safer in the water, in the reservoir.
Well, I would have done. And the thing is that I suppose that's an example of an irrational fear, because ultimately, I'm sure the water would have been much more of a harm to me than the dog.
You always get the owners, don't you, that go, he or she, they won't bite. It's like, well, thanks, I'm not willing to take that risk right now.
Yeah. I remember, because I used to, when I was a kid, I used to hate beaches. I used to hate the idea of going to a beach.
Were you aquaphobic? Because a lot of people, even people that say they don't feel like swimming or water, the second they see the ocean, they can't even bear to look.
No, there was two reasons I hated beaches as a kid, I would say. First one was I hated it when, like, you'd go to the beach and you'd be really clean and you're fine. And then when you leave the beach, you always had sand all over you and you had, water all over you and, you stunk of seaweed. And I used to not like that. I didn't like it.
Because I used to love that.
I didn't like that, but my biggest fear of the beach, and this is what relates to what we were just talking about, was I used to absolutely dread going to the beach, because I used to associate them with dogs not being on leads, beaches.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean,
did, and I used to genuinely. I think I had one bad experience.
Run after you when you're running with a frisbee.
Yeah, no, literally. I think I was about 6, and I had a vivid memory of a dog chasing me up a beach when I was about 6, and it was terrifying. Really, really terrifying.
Yeah.
In fact, I must just say my fear of beaches did help me once, though. I say fear of beaches. I don't have a fear of beaches. My dislike of beaches saved me once, because I went on holiday to the Lake District when I was about 9 or 10, and I was such a stroppy child about going to the beach. I was like, I don't want to go to the beach. I'm not going to the beach. I'm not going to do. Eventually, my parents gave in and were like, right, we won't go to the beach then. We'll go do something else. But we're not happy about it. And I was like, all right, sorry. And then
ruined the day.
It turned out that day there was a serial killer on the beach with a gun.
Oh my god!
With a gun who
that took a turn.
Yeah. So, and I mean, the same day he killed loads and loads of people and then killed himself. So
my
he's dead now.
Goodness me!
But part of me is like, and I'm not saying I saved my parents. I'm not saying I saved my
family. Essentially,
you
did, incidentally, yeah.
But in a way,
not incidentally, rather. I mean,
in a way, it's like if we had gone to that beach, maybe there would have been a different outcome. You don't know, do you?
You might not have been there for this podcast, mate. You never know.
So if I hadn't had a fear of dogs, maybe I wouldn't be here right now. But no, I think in a way, having a fear of dogs is irrational in a way, unless it's like a very, very violent, angry dog that you know has got issues and has injured people. It's an irrational fear, I guess, in a way, because I used to be terrified of even the really, really, really tiny ones, like pugs.
Yeah. I
used to be terrified. So I suppose it is irrational. I'll never forget my neighbour, lovely lady who still lives next door to me now. She's a great dog lover, and she had at least one dog. She might have had more than one in the past. And she found out, obviously, that I had a fear of dogs. So I went round to her house one time to give her a Christmas card or something.
Yeah.
And she said, right, I'm putting the dog behind this fence so he can't get to you. She let me come into the house. I stood on the stairs, and then she closed. You know how some people who have pets have like gates so the dog can't run about the house? Or
oh yeah, of course.
So she closed the gate something near the stairs. What I didn't realise was the dog was actually with me on that side of the gate.
Oh.
And I got really upset. I was probably crying. I was really upset about it. And I said, "Why? I've got a fear of dogs. Why would you do this?" And I think
I respect you for that. If you've got a fear of and especially if they knew as well.
I got really annoyed, and even now, at the age I am now, there's still a little bit that goes like, "Oh, I think it was quite a cruel thing to do." But I think her argument was, and maybe there's something right in this. Maybe there's a good reason for doing it. Her argument was, if you are exposed to something like a dog, you get more used to it. That was her reasoning for it.
But like I said before, is that's an example there of where someone's been thrown straight into the deep end, and oftentimes that doesn't work, and consequently what it does is it actually elevates a fear to a new height that like you would literally. Some people become agoraphobic in a sense that they don't want to leave the house because of a fear if they've been exposed to it in the wrong way. So it can be really detrimental. I've
got a similar one for that actually, which is that when I was 11, we went on a trip. Do you remember PGL? Do you ever do a PGL trip?
Oh yeah, I think it was. I don't know whether it was actually called it, but I think we abbreviated it as Parents Get Lost or something.
I think it is. Yeah, we used to call it that as well. So we went to Broughton Park, and they've got like zip wires, they've got things to climb, they've got
it's brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
They've got rafts to go on. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I looked forward to it, and I thought it'd be amazing a week away. But what I found was, I actually discovered when I got there that I actually had a bit of a fear of heights, which I never really knew I had. And this was exemplified when we went on the zip wire. And I was fine walking up to the top of the zip wire, and I was, at the top I was kind of mostly alright.
Well, that was the tallest, what I call it, apparatus? Not really. Like, tallest obstacle, if you like.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I got to the top, and the guy, the guy's there, and I remember he was ginger. I always remember his face, and you'll find out why I remember his face in a second. And I said to myself, I can't do the zip wire. I'm really scared.
When you were at the top.
Yeah.
So you've gone all the way up there.
Yeah.
You know what? In fairness, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Like they get to the front of a roller coaster queue and then they decide, it's
can't do
overwhelming.
Yeah. And he said to me, I'll never forget. He said to me, well, why don't we just, I must have already been in the harness at this point or whatever. He said, well, why don't you stand at the edge? You've got that far, and then we'll take you out your harness and you can go.
Then you realise you've not got the harness on.
Yeah. And
why don't you just stand on the edge?
He said, why don't you stand on the edge, so you've got this far, then we'll unbuckle you and you can take your harness off and you can walk down the hill to do whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, I still didn't really want to, but I was like, right, okay, I'll appease him, because I think he kept nagging me to do it, and I was like, I'll appease him.
Also, you were holding up the line.
Yeah. So I was standing at the edge, I'm standing on this edge, and I'm looking over the edge, and I'm terrified. And He pushes me. He pushes me down.
Wow. No wonder you remember him. That is crazy.
That's cruel to do to a kid, I think.
It is, but it's also hilarious. I can't mistake that. But
I got to the bottom, and there's another guy at the bottom who was there to help you off. And I said to him, I must have said something like, "Oh, this, it's so cruel. He's just pushed me off." Da, da, da. It's like, "Yeah, but you enjoyed it, didn't you?" And I went, "No," and it was just like I just hated it so much. Like, I think that's one of those things that just didn't benefit me. Like, I think sometimes when you're out of your comfort zone, there's a feeling that like it's a positive to you. Like, like I said with the dog, like although I didn't like being chopped with the dog behind the gate, I could look back now and go, maybe that did help me get over the fear. But I strongly believe with the zip wire we didn't, because I became more bitch about it, more angry, and actually kind of hated that trip because of that.
It's one of them. I mean, with myself, it's interesting how fears differ. I think some of the most common fears we've already reflected on as being arachnid.
I was just going to say, it's funny because I complained to my teacher about that, who must have seen it.
Yeah.
And he, I think, complained to PGL or Bratton, and then they never went back there again. Like the next year, they didn't go to PGL; they went to Lockerbie, and they never went back again. So
I mean, I'm not a safety instructor for an obstacle course, but I wouldn't do that, to be honest. I wouldn't, like, if someone clearly felt uneasy about something, an obvious fear of height, I wouldn't just push them off the edge. That's a bit wild, to be honest, because you're not going to enjoy the zip line at all if you you weren't going to enjoy it. But can you look back though on that and think, well, I did it?
I suppose the only positive I can look back on now is I feel, looking back, because there was a lot of things like that on the trip.
Yeah.
That I was very anxious about doing, like rock climbing or what's it called when you abseiling when you're going down.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. There was a lot of things that I was very anxious about, and I think if I hadn't done any of them, I would have got to the end of the trip and gone, or I'd look back now and go, it was a huge waste of money for my parents to send me on that trip, and I feel quite bad for my parents for sending me on it and wasting that money if I didn't do anything. But it's like, well, I have done at least a zip wire, so I can look back now and go, well, it wasn't a complete waste of time. And maybe I've never done a zip wire since, so I don't know if that did face my fears. I don't know if I'd be able to do it now.
Do you know what's interesting is, like, with myself is I am like not one bit scared of heights.
I didn't think I was though. So
no, honestly, not one bit.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how fears differ, because like with myself, I'd say, I mean, you've probably seen how I behave like a bit of a child, to be honest, but
yeah,
I'm such an adrenaline junkie, and I love whenever we go out, I'm at the top of a tree or I'm at the edge of a cliff or this, that, the other. Like, I'm always doing.
I went to Edale and you were climbing over all the big massive rocks.
Yeah, like, or jumping across them, or just doing parkour or whatever it is. Like, I love doing like athletic feats and pushing myself to limits. But the thing is in spite of doing that, I know there's a genuine like possibility of death. So with that in mind, do I fear? Yes, but in a way that it protects me. So
you're segueing. It's like we've had this conversation before, because you're segueing very well into my list, because one of the ones on my list was death.
your fear of death. I mean, this is a really good one, because I mean, we'll talk about it now, because we talked about grief, and I can't remember. I think I said something like, I'm not fearful necessarily of dying. I'm fearful of life, because life's all we know. I mean, like you say, I am religious, and I want to believe that, if I'm a good person, that my soul at least will go to heaven, and I do believe in God.
I'll tell you what it is for me though. I think the idea of actually dying doesn't scare me too much, because either there will be an afterlife or something great, or there won't be, and I won't know. Do you know what I mean? So the actual idea of what's after death doesn't terrify me.
Well, there's hell, though. But in which case, that hell would terrify me. Admittedly, like I don't think I believe in hell, because I want to believe in heaven. I don't want to believe in a dark side. But and I believe that God, even with the worst kinds of people that exist, I believe that God forgives.
Yeah.
As crazy as it is, But
I was just going to say, it's the actual act of death that terrifies me. It's not what comes next. I'm not too scared about what's after.
When you say the oh yeah,
I mean, like
yeah, but
having
a
heart attack or having a
right,
stroke.
I get you. Because what I was going to say is, a lot of people fear their bodies after death, but scientifically, you're not going to know on that part. If there's a soul,
True,
and you go to heaven, then you might know about your extra being, or you'd like to think so, that you live in your extra being upstairs. But certainly your body on earth, you're not going to have any recollection of anything. So I think that's something that gives closure, some comfort. Would you say?
Yeah.
Not knowing is better than because you can't fear if you don't know something, can you? You can fear the unknown, like we do. You've just discussed death there. It is the fear of the unknown. You don't know how you're going to die, do you?
It is the fear of the unknown, but like I've just said, it doesn't really terrify me, the fear of the unknown, because like I say, either there will be something great or there won't be something and I won't know. What terrifies me is the actual act of dying, which, whether it be a heart attack or a car crash or whatever it may be, terrifies me because like that will be painful, wouldn't it? So
Yeah,
I guess pain is the fear that I have rather than death.
Well,
The idea
yeah.
of
I
being in
mean,
pain
I mean,
or getting cancer or whatever it may be.
I mean, yeah, of course, nobody wants to die in fear, and unfortunately, obviously, for a lot of people, they do die in extreme pain, be it through illness or assault or whatever it is. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. But like we can't ponder something like that. We can't ponder dying of a terminal illness in long term agony, or or getting killed by somebody else, or whatever it is. Or
I guess death is one of those things that I would say I fear it. I wrote it down on my list.
yeah.
But I think it's one of those things that's like not a constant fear. Like I just think about it like once in a blue moon I'll think, oh, I don't want to die.
Do you find yourself thinking about it more? Sorry to interject. More at night, because I do. I don't know what it is. I get more like morbid at night. I don't know why.
But I don't think that's just death. I think I don't know about you, but I overthink a lot of things at night time, whether it be regrets of the past or jobs or this or that.
That's why I'm on my phone though. That's why I'm on my phone, because it saves me having to. Because I do struggle to sleep, and that a lot of the reasons that I do is because I just completely overanalyze everything, and it becomes overwhelming quickly. Or like I'll start thinking of my granddad, and I'll get emotional, and then like I want to get back on TikTok or this, that, the other, because I don't want to reflect on that. Or
one of the things you just mentioned overthinking. Then one of the things that I didn't write about on my list, but is a definite fear for me, definitely, is I've got a massive fear of embarrassment.
yes,
and I think a fear of embarrassment can be something that stops you from going outside your comfort zone.
Have you got any?
Whether it be joining the gym or.
Well, I'm sure you've got. I was going to say, I'm sure you have got. Several examples. Do you want to kind of perhaps give our viewers an example of a time you felt embarrassed, or a fear of like upcoming embarrassment?
Well, I was just going to say that certain things that I look back on in life, whether it be joining the gym, I was quite embarrassed to do that at first. I thought people would be looking at me and laughing at me if I don't use the machines right. Whether it be when I got my award for my short film, I should have given more of a speech there, really, but I was just so embarrassed about walking, not embarrassed, but so anxious, I suppose was the right word, about walking up and saying the wrong thing. I don't know, I feel like I get embarrassed about a lot of things. I think embarrassment is a big reason why I wouldn't apply for that job, or I wouldn't talk to that girl, or I wouldn't do this, or I wouldn't do that. I think embarrassment can set you back.
Fear of like how they'd responded, humiliation,
Yeah, because it can create, it can create a real barrier of comfort zone where you don't leave that.
Again though, just to I've said before in the past, I don't like giving advice, but if it's anything for our viewers or viewer, you never know. Again, writing things down though, in terms of if you write it down, prioritize it, and you'll look over your notes, I bet, and you'll think, really, is this something to be embarrassed over, or is this something that's like long term someone's going to think about? Because I remember someone said to me, and it stuck with me, is like, if I could realize really in the best way how little people care about me.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Most of the things that I worry about, or most things that anybody worries about, realistically, in a week's time, a day's time, whatever, they'll have forgotten about.
They've got their own lives, yeah.
You think about, oh, should I ask that girl out? Thing is, in a year's time, 2 years' time, whatever, she's probably not even going to remember you exist if it goes wrong. Or if it goes right, great, you're in a relationship. That job, should I apply for that job? What if I don't get it? Well, if you don't get it, nothing's changed.
Yeah, and there's plenty more.
And if you get it, great, you've got a job. There's
no same way you could say there's plenty more women, there's plenty more jobs, there's plenty more opportunities.
It's like I said about the gym before, that embarrassment of going to the gym. What if I do it wrong? Well, going to the gym and doing it wrong, in my book, still better than not going to the gym at all.
Do you know what? Honestly, if anyone was to judge, and 90% of the time they wouldn't, but for those 10% of people, you would be shocked at how great they are, and they would want to help.
Yeah,
they would help your form. They would help. They'd spot you. They'd like people. People in the gym.
A lot of people humiliate others or cause embarrassment.
But that's to boost their own. Insecure. Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. They do it to boost their own some people just do it because they're quite callous and that, and they just want to boost their own ego. But the majority of people, if they are to insult or kind of like bully people in that sense, they're doing it because they've really got their own insecurities. They've got their own problems, and that's why, and that's why it's a shame. But I think, the majority of people genuinely are so understanding. I can't think of a time I've ever been in the gym and seen anyone take the mick out of somebody else in
No,
the
but
gym.
I guess it's an irrational fear again, isn't it? Because again, would it happen? Would somebody actually come up to me and laugh at me? Probably not. It's quite an unrealistic thing to happen, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
But there's still that fear inside of me. Although what certainly was when I joined the gym when I first joined, aged 18, 19. That fear of what if people laugh at me? What if what if I'm rubbish at it? What if this, that, the other? And it's trying to break down that worry and forget about the worry in a way.
I think sometimes it's about your level of worry. Some things are rational to worry about, but they don't require a massive level of worry. So they're not entirely irrational. I'll give you an example, right? I used to worry a lot about, and I mean this with absolutely no disrespect if there are any smokers listening to the podcast, but I had a big fear of cigarettes.
Oh, I did. And to some extent, I still do.
What it was is obviously I've never smoked anything in my life, not even a vape.
No, me neither.
But I had this big fear of like secondhand smoke,
Yeah.
and none of my family smoke. Like none of the family I like live with or anything smoke or ever have growing up.
I used to actually get. I've never actually spoken about this, but there was a time in my life when I used to get really paranoid about drugs and cigarettes. So
drugs was another big one.
I used to have nightmares that I would see a cigarette on the floor and start smoking it. I had nightmares about that.
Well, my fear became really irrational at a point. It was like I remember being at a music festival where obviously drugs were, because it's a very different scene to nightclubs. Obviously, in a nightclubs, there's probably the same number of people doing drugs, but obviously the difference is the majority, like 95% will be doing them in the toilets and coming back out, so it's not really an issue. Whereas at a concert,
yeah,
they're doing it all around you in the public, like right next to you. You could be like shoulder to shoulder with someone doing it. But again, I needed to acknowledge though that as bad as it is, it's them in their body. I might be right next to them, but I'm not the one snorting the drug.
Yeah, but also the one thing that I've started to realise to, I guess, reduce the fear I have of smoking and drugs and stuff is that most people, not all, but most people that do smoking or that smoke or do drugs or whatever, they're not going to waste the drugs on you. I used to have this massive fear of, what if somebody will accidentally give me a drug or force me to have a drug or
yeah.
They're expensive. They're not going to just give you a drug like nor would I want that. Of course I wouldn't. But like I used to have this fear of what if they're going to force feed me a drug. Well, they're not. They're expensive. They'll want to use it all for themselves. Do you know what I mean?
I guess the only one that's kind of maybe could have a tiny impact on you would be the smoke of perhaps marijuana, for example. Like if you were exposed to that in, I guess, a big volume. But again, it's like you're not taking the drug. You're not inhaling for yourself. I don't know. I used to always like I didn't want to be anywhere around a smoker ever.
No, I was the same. I didn't even want to be friends with people who smoked.
And yeah, it's a weird one because sometimes if I get symptoms on the way back, I think a lot of it was more psychological than it was ever a physical issue. I think I was expecting to struggle to breathe or to cough more, or and I think whenever I did that, then I'd get angry and be like, "Oh, it's their fault. It's secondhand smoke." And it's like, well, most of the time it's not. It's just me
being ill.
Yeah, just like overcompensating.
I think for me it was. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit in the education podcast we did. But I think a little bit it was for me is I watched the like PSHC lessons. We had the videos about like road safety and smoking and stuff. And I think I must have had such a vivid imagination as an 11, 12-year-old, whatever I was.
Yeah.
That I used to take them in so verbatim, these videos. And, I used to really seriously worry about these videos and think about the consequences of drugs and road safety and whatever it may be. Teenage pregnancy, whatever it was. I used to think about these things so much as a young, impressionable teenager, I guess. And I think my imagination was kind of working overtime because most of the things they were warning me not to do, I would never have done anyway. I'd never do drugs. I'd never.
Yeah, I mean,
have a teenage pregnancy. I can't get pregnant.
I mean, I talk about like roots as being something that's quite integral to me. Is however, and I have messed up and I have done a lot of things that I regret. Maybe we'll do a podcast on regrets sometime. I don't know.
Maybe.
But
I don't have any.
yeah, no, it'd just be me talking for an hour, wouldn't it?
I can't break.
Point is, I think I always say grow, but stick to your roots. So grow the same.
You talking about marijuana here? Or?
No, sorry, no. God, I should explain that. Sorry, no. When I say grow from your roots, I'm not talking that. No, I'm saying like if we're a tree, grow, gain new leaves, gain new people, gain new opportunities and explore new things, but always remember your roots and where you come from. And I come from a very, very good family that have always taught me from young about the value of health and your body and your mind.
Well, yeah, same to me. Yeah, definitely.
So again, it's like it's not. Don't get me wrong. I truly believe, honestly, that even if I didn't have that upbringing, and it's easy to say because I did, and I did have a privileged, good upbringing. It's like if I was born with like crack in my veins or or like crack in the house growing up, maybe I can't really speak for that experience and I've got to
you grow up in an environment and you get used to things that are around you, aren't you? Don't you? I remember we had again, I don't know if I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but this is a great analogy. I remember when I was in like year 9, maybe year 10, it must be, I guess, yeah, year 8, year 9 RE, religious education. We had a lecture about I guess it was kind of about, I don't really know why he was talking about it, but he was talking to us about pornography, and he was basically saying that a great example that he gave was that because he was saying that the more you watch porn, the more you become desensitized. And one of the examples he gave was if he showed us a video every single day of a cow and someone chopping its head off every single day, by the time a month's passed, you could watch it and you wouldn't be, day one you'd be squirming, you'd be looking away, you'd be horrified. But if you did that every day for a month, by the end of the month, you'd probably be a bit more used to it.
And there's proven science, psychology that completely agrees with that. Is the more exposure you get to even something grotesque, your brain becomes desensitized, and it's like, and the worst thing is then to I guess suit your analogy, that's then not enough. You need more.
It's the same with anything. It's not even drugs. It's not pornography or anything. It's also stuff like, for example,
anything that's an addiction. You need more of.
For example, McDonald's. If you have McDonald's once a year, oh my gosh, it's a treat. It's amazing. But if you had McDonald's every single day, then again, after a month, after 2 months, it's not special.
But you'd want more as well. So it'd be like McDonald's in the morning, KFC in the evening. You'd want more. You'd want, it's like anything. I mean, I don't mind sharing. As a young man, I think I'm not sure if we have in previous podcasts. I think we've touched on pornography with young men before, and I'm sure women as well. But it's something that I've experienced.
No, I think the thing with pornography, for example, is that it's, I imagine, so easy to get to it. Touch of a button or 2 buttons, you could be on it. Whereas with the older generations back in their day, it wouldn't have been as accessible. Talk about being desensitized.
Well, I heard like you used to have to it was kind of like magazines and stuff, and then of course there'd be like nude images on there and stuff like that. But now it's completely different, isn't it? It's like you can, things are so accessible. But the worrying thing is for young people especially is you could be 9, 10, 11, 12 and find like the worst material online.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about pornography. Like generally speaking, on the internet,
violence and all sorts of videos, and all sorts of things.
The internet is something I think that is very general to say, but I think can relate to fear a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of fear. Again, I know it's not quite so related, but it could be, the internet could be a cause of cyberbullying, which could invoke a lot of anxiety and fear in you.
Well, I think, I mean, the great thing is I think that, like, I feel like more people are so understanding now because I mean, I never wanted mental health online to be like a trend, to be something that people just thought.
Do you think it is?
I think, with some people, I think that they're the bullies that will then put on the story like, be kind, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's a lot of hypocrisy. But at the same time, there are also, on the flip side, a lot of very, very genuine people that care for the welfare and the well-being of others, and they wouldn't project their own issues onto other people, because that's the thing. We all have issues. We all have insecurities. but it doesn't give us any right to,
Belittle others.
to project those.
It's not nice to feel belittled, is it?
It's definitely not. And it's something that I think people do to kind of to make themselves feel better, to make themselves feel stronger. Do you know what I mean? If they're feeling that low, I think that's why they do it. But gladly, I don't think I ever have. I genuinely, I don't think I've ever like targeted somebody in any sense to kind of like boost my own.
I don't think I have really.
Yeah.
Should I go on to the last fear that I had written down?
Yeah, we're on number 5 already. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So we've had. So I'll just do a little roundup. We'll do a top hits. We had loneliness / fear of the future.
We had rats.
We had rats. We had dogs.
Which is kind of mine, yeah.
And we had death.
And death. So I'm gonna guess your next one. I'm gonna guess it is
my last fear. I'm sure I have.
Was it like? Did you put jobs or career or something?
I kind of fear the future. It's kind of in there. I suppose I probably have a lot of other fears as well, but these are the kind of top 5 that I think about a lot. I guess.
Yeah.
Or more. Think about more than.
Go on. I'm intrigued.
You don't want to guess? You don't want to guess?
No, because I.
All right. If I tell you it's amaxophobia. Do you know what that is?
Wow, I've never heard of that in my life.
Do you want me to say what it is?
Yeah.
Fear of driving.
A fear of driving. Very interesting one.
It was. I guess this is one of the reasons I wanted to do the fear podcast was to talk about this, because when we started the podcast, when we did the week we recorded our first podcast, which was we recorded the first one on the 16th of October. It didn't go out for about another month until after that. But we recorded the first one on the 16th of October, and that week I think was the week I got my car. It was certainly very soon after I got my car.
Yeah.
And we obviously recorded the podcast in the car, which we've done ever since. And I passed my driving test back in August 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that like? Yeah, over 3 years between passing the test and buying a car.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I genuinely had such a big, massive fear of driving. I was under kind of no illusions that I could drive, and I knew that I could. And I guess in areas that I knew I probably felt okay driving around. I guess, but I was and I guess still am to an extent terrified of roundabouts, terrified of motorways, terrified of.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it comes down to fear of being terrified that I'm going to die in a car crash.
Well, I was going to say, I think
That's the big.
I think that the fear isn't actually driving; it's something going wrong driving, isn't it?
Yeah. But one thing that's happened since starting this podcast, and since having now, over 2 months now of driving, over 2 months since I've had my car, I've got to a point now where around areas that I know and around areas that I feel comfortable, so going to work, going to the gym, going to the pub quiz that we do, even coming here, we've just driven, we're outside Age UK at the moment, but like we've just been for a Costa and we've been to Asda today and stuff. Areas that I know I feel really quite comfortable doing now, which I never thought I would. And I think in time I'll get more comfortable with areas that I don't know. I'll get more comfortable with motorways and roundabouts and stuff, and I'll get more comfortable and confident with them. But the big reason I want to talk about this was because, for me, I always put off getting a car because I was always like, oh no, I'm scared of that, I can never do that. But sometimes I think, if you just come out of your comfort zone, it can be a great thing, and it can really help you, and it can really benefit you. Because I think, in a way, I was scared of driving. I'd never say that I wasn't, but I think a lot of it was probably irrational. I think there's bound to be a bit of trepidation when buying a car, because it's the first time in your life that you've ever been in a car without anybody else, really. Well,
do you know what I think the worst thing is with fear? Is that we fear the worst. We fear the absolute worst case scenario.
Yeah.
You're most likely never going to crash this car. Not to say it won't happen. Sometimes it's not even, it's unavoidable.
Yeah, and a lot of the time it's other people on the road. It's not even you.
Well, that's why I say it's unavoidable. A lot of the times, like you say, it's other reckless drivers and that who don't have a care or or anything like you.
License. There's people out there that don't even have a license.
Well, exactly, yeah. But I understand how people like that could evoke fear.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
But I think you were just implying there is that a lot of the fears that I've had in life have been a worst case scenario of fear. So I didn't buy a car because I was terrified I was going to die in a car crash. I didn't, I was terrified of dogs, and I didn't go near dogs because I was terrified that they were going to bite me. I didn't go near rats because I was terrified that I don't even know what I was terrified
they'd
of.
like infect you or something.
Yeah, I guess.
But again,
So.
it's like you say, all those examples there you give are suspecting the worst case scenario.
They are.
If you see a rat, rats don't want to be around humans. A rat scurries. If you see a dog, most of the time,
they're all right. Yeah.
It's going to be a domestic dog that that just wants to wag its tail and say hello.
I really focus on the minority, and I really focus on the thing that's probably not going to happen. And I guess the whole reason we're doing this podcast today was because I really want to highlight, with regard to mental health, which is a big part of the podcast. I have got myself into a mindset over the years with certain things. Driving is just one example, but I guess there's loads of examples. I've got myself into a mindset of, I can't possibly do that because that'll involve coming out of my comfort zone. And thus, I've then not come out of my comfort zone with a lot of things.
But if you think about it, right...
Which is not a better life, because you don't experience a lot of things. Now that I've bought a car, I'm like, this wasn't so bad. Like, this is fine, really.
It's a leap of faith, isn't it? But this is the thing I always encourage with people is, especially from my own experiences as well. I know that avoidance you stay exactly where you are, and yes,
you try nothing new.
Yes, whilst you've got avoidance, you've got contentment, but you're never ever going to progress. You're never going to.
It's like anything. It's like I guess I'm not too keen on the idea of getting in a relationship because I'm like, well, what if my parents tease me about it, or what if my parents pick on me? And it's like, well, if they did, it would be probably a week, and then they'd get over it.
The thing is, you've got to remember,
or they wouldn't do that, and they'd be happy for me. Of course, they'd be happy for me. So
that's for me is an irrational fear, because your parents care more about you than anybody, and like you say, is it? I'd understand it a little bit more if you were, if you were maybe like early high school age or late primary school age, that kind of a kid essentially. Like
I think that's probably where it all stems from in a way, because I did have for want of a better word, girlfriend when I was in primary school, and I think they did tease me a little bit, as you would, if you had a kid that had a girlfriend in primary school. They teased me a little bit, and I think I've kind of built that up in my head to be such a massive thing.
Yeah, but again, I say, even with that, what's the worst with it, really? It's not.
No, you're right.
It's not that. It's.
I guess it's embarrassment again. We went back to talking about before, fear of embarrassment. I guess it's an extrapolation of that, I guess.
Do you think you could bring a girlfriend back to introduce to your parents? Do you think you could face that? You don't? Interested in that? I think I could.
I'm not saying I never could. I'm not saying that, in the future I couldn't, because there was a time, even this year, when I thought I could never buy a car. So, I'd never say never. We're all capable of the most incredible things. But right now, as it stands, no, I couldn't.
Interesting, yeah.
I couldn't even, I don't know.
But think about it, in terms of what we've said, because like I say, we're developing and learning as we do this. Could you not take into account what we've spoke about and say, but I had a fear over this, and then when I did it, I realised it's not that bad.
That helps with a lot of things.
I mean, you've got to get the girlfriend first, but I'm just saying, like...
No, it helps with a lot of things, because I think that, in general, I think in the last, 6 months to a year, I've become a lot more open-minded with a lot of things. It's one of the things I really want to talk about on the Goals podcast, and the kind of general podcast about what we've done this year. Like, I wrote a list yesterday, which we'll talk again a lot more about on the Goals podcast. But I wrote a list yesterday of all the things I've achieved this year, and they're all amazing. And the amount of stuff I have achieved this year is amazing. And most of them, or quite a lot of them, I could not have envisaged this time last year that I would end up doing.
No, yeah, exactly.
So,
but at the same time, they've not just arrived. Like, you've clearly worked diligently on all of them.
You have to open a mental door in your mind. You have to break down barriers and really put yourself outside your comfort zone. And it's one thing that our friend Sean is always encouraging us to do, I guess. And
absolutely.
And other friends as well encourage us to do. And it's my one big stumbling block in life is I'd much rather stay in my comfort zone than try new things. And it's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but it's something I'm definitely capable and definitely culpable for doing. So I guess fear of embarrassment and fear of trying new things is a big one for me. Potentially my biggest fear, actually.
Yeah, you're saying that makes sense. So it's kind of like a fear in itself. Is a fear of doing new things.
My mindset, maybe it wasn't maybe it wasn't conscious mindset. But maybe my unconscious mindset was, if I stay in my comfort zone, nothing bad can happen because I'm comfortable here. Whereas I always thought, if I come out of my comfort zone, bad things could happen.
I think,
but ultimately, unless you come out of your comfort zone, nothing will happen.
I think he or she dares wins a lot of the time. I think being spontaneous opens you up to new. I mean, most of the great things that I can talk about.
Most of the great things that I've done this year have happened spontaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
they do. Yeah.
Coming out of a comfort zone.
But that's the thing is I couldn't comment too much for myself about things that I'm avoiding, because I know that's not, that's nothing to kind of, I can't say anything positive about avoidance really, because there is nothing really. The only thing you could say is, as I've said before, there's contentment. It's easier. It's a lot easier to live in your bubble.
Of course it is.
Where,
for a long time, I put off applying for filming jobs or applying for TV jobs.
Yeah.
Because I thought, what if I get a job? What if they, give me a job in at the BBC and then I'm rubbish at it, or I show no initiative, or I really can't do it. The BBC would never hire me again. Now, that would never happen because the BBC is such a big organisation that even if you really royally messed it up somewhere, another part of the BBC would probably hire you because it's such a big organisation. And the second thing is, I probably wouldn't mess it up. I'd probably be okay. I'm not going to massively mess it up that they're going to hate. Even if I wasn't perfect, they'd teach me stuff and they'd embrace me. And I guess it's just about coming to terms with, again, worst case scenario is what I always think about, and I shouldn't. I should always kind of get through that barrier and kind of face my fears.
I think a lot of times with work, I feel like, especially because my experiences of working, several years have been all in fairly corporate roles where there's not been that much of a social element. So I think a lot of the times I can forget quite quickly that people still want to help. People don't want to see you fail, in jobs and stuff. They want to,
they want to encourage you.
Yeah, it's not all just, to the letter. Outside of that, the people like me and you, and a lot of the times I think
social interaction. Because when we were having, we've just been for some food before we recorded this, and we got a what was it, a turkey wrap? They called it. It wasn't a wrap really, but they called it a turkey wrap, which is like a Christmas dinner in a bun. And then we both said, "Oh, we're still a little bit hungry. Should we go up and get some more food?" So we went and got a chicken tikka masala. But in between having those two bits of food, you said, "Oh, I can't really bear going up again because I don't want to." I think you're quite embarrassed by the idea of going up to order more.
I think, it's a good point. I think what it was, I can't remember specifically, so that's not great for the podcast. But I think there was an experience when I was younger in a shop where I'd bought something and then I'd like gone back or something to question the item or something. I can't remember something. And basically, you talked about fear of embarrassment before. I won't say I have a fear of embarrassment, but it's definitely something I remember. Is that I left that shop feeling like an absolute idiot.
Yeah.
I'd done something to kind of like really embarrass myself. And looking back, again, if I think about it, was it that bad? Is he going to remember it next week? No. He probably forgot about it. He might have had a laugh about it to his, wife and kids on the way home or whatever. But that's a great. Besides that, that's it.
But that's a great example about people not remembering things. Another example I could give was, I remember when I was in college, and we used to book out these little editing suites. I probably told you the story before. I don't think I've told it on the podcast. Maybe I have. I don't think I have. You could book out these little editing suites. So I was doing my editing on one of the computers in one of the edit suites, and I went out to the next editing suite to go and look at some of my friends' work in their editing suite. I come back into my editing suite, and there's a blonde girl sitting down. I can only see the back of her head. I can see the blonde hair, whatever. And I thought it was my friend Natalie, because we had a friend called Natalie in college, and she had blonde hair, and she was about the same kind of shape and size and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I went in, and as a joke, I went, "Natalie, what are you doing in here?" And I kind of screamed, shouted at her as a bit of a joke. And she turned around, and it wasn't her; it was a stranger. And I felt so embarrassed. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because that's another example of, like, every now and then I do still think about that a little bit and go, "That was quite embarrassing." But she probably doesn't even remember it. That's strange that it happened to. She probably maybe for a few days after she's been like, "That was a bit weird." That guy that stormed in, but. I think nowadays, 5 years later, 6 years later, she probably doesn't even remember.
I think the thing is a lot of the times you got to remember we're so serious about things, but like people see comedy within it. Like if you can see a comedic side, I remember once I kid you not, I think it was in Next or somewhere, clothes shopping obviously, and I bumped into a mannequin and said sorry. And then I continued on the conversation with the mannequin and said, "Oh, I thought you were a person." And then I acknowledged I was talking to the mannequin still. And someone saw this. And honestly, I wanted the ground to just swallow me up. I laughed about it with her. But on the inside, I felt absolutely like ridiculous.
Yeah.
But again, I look back and I can think about it. It's probably a funny
I'm sure
memory.
the mannequin doesn't remember that.
Yeah, well, no, definitely. I'll probably go back and say hello to the mannequin again and say, do you remember that time? Oh, I'm talking to you again. But yeah, it's like, we've all done silly things in public or, incidentally a lot of the times. And again, you talk about social interaction. I'd say we're both fairly, is it fair to say we're quite extroverted in general?
I think I've definitely got a lot better in recent years. I think because I've had to work in retail for nearly 7 years, starting when I was 15 and 22 now.
Is it fair to say, I'm speculating here, but I genuinely think your confidence has grown from your weight loss.
That's part of it. I lost a lot of weight last year, at the start of last year, and I think that gave me a lot of body confidence. I think there's lots of things. That have contributed to it, actually.
Yeah.
I think even down on winning my BAFTA award last year for my film, I think that gave me a bit of confidence in terms of the filmmaking aspect, because I think even before then I thought I was a bit of a hack that had kind of just done a course that I didn't even know if I was any good at. So to win that award, that gave me a lot of confidence. Confidence comes from inside, as I said in my film. Confidence can come from a lot of different places. A lot of different things we do in our day-to-day life, whether it's with friends or on a job level or whatever.
Yeah.
It comes from a lot of different places, I guess. Should we wrap this podcast up now, because we've done, I guess, about probably an hour and 20, I guess. So
I guess the only last thing I'd say is, as well, I think confidence can definitely come from, like we said, role models.
Yeah.
Is a big one.
And we spoke a lot about that last week, didn't we, on the media influences one? And I'd love to do, maybe at some point, I don't know how much there is really to talk about, but I'd love to do one about role models.
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of fears.
Yeah.
I think I've enjoyed this podcast. I enjoy them all, but I'm saying I think this one's been a good one to talk about.
I have to say, I think, whilst I've enjoyed having guests on for the last 3 weeks, I have to say, getting to the end of this one, I feel like the stuff that we've said has been a lot better. And that's not to be harsh with the guests. The guests have all been excellent. I think Brendan was excellent. I think he had a very great expertise on mental health, and Sonny was very passionate about the media and the influence that can have. And likewise, Charlie was very well spoken about education and knew a lot about
absolutely
education. But what I would say is, I think sometimes having just the two of us on, we dig a little bit deeper, because we're not having to talk to three people. It's just the two of us, back and forth. And I think we dig a bit deeper, and I don't know, there's just something more about it that's a bit more.
Well, I think
seems like we have better conversations in a way. But
I think of all our guests, and our guests have been a credit to the podcast. So, not saying anything negative about our guests. I just think with us two, we have very similar. It's weird. It's like they're similar but different. Our experiences, but we can kind of really relate to each other, can't we?
You never want people on podcasts too similar or too different, because
difference is great. I celebrate difference.
If they're too different, it becomes an argument. If they're too similar, it becomes boring and bland. And it's like sitcoms. Big part of sitcoms is that you have two characters or situations that don't quite blend together, but they have to get on through their shared or differences. And it's one thing that I'm very passionate about. I believe that whether you have different political views or different views on the world or travel or politics or whatever it may be, we can still be friends. We can still have an open conversation, a candid conversation about our views. I think that a lot of I would say especially our generation, but I suppose it is every generation, it seems to me that if you have different political views or if you have different views on something, that then means you can't be friends. And that seems absurd to me. We should celebrate our differences, and we should if we have differences, I use politics as an example, but if we talk about our differences and say, well, I agree with this, and you go, I don't quite agree with that, but this sounds interesting, I can see what you're saying there, and we can have a more open and
I think in difference do you develop commonality. I think.
So should we wrap up, Piers?
Thank you as always for listening.
Imagine if we recorded this podcast and then I drove you home now, and then we crashed the car on the way home.
We crashed the car. We see a rat.
We see a dog.
We see a dog that bites us. And then we die. Yeah.
And there's no future. There's no fear.
But the last podcast ever recorded. Yeah.
It would be kind of ironic.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But again, a huge thank you if you got this far for listening. We'll be back next week.
Next week is kind of the last regular show, I guess, because next week I'm thinking friendships. I want to do friendships for a while, so maybe we'll talk about friendships next week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we'll have a guest. I think people are just so busy towards Christmas. Maybe we will, but I don't think we will. So next week's the last regular one, and then New Year's Eve, 31st of December, we'll have. So I should say next week's going to go out on Christmas Eve. So I guess a bit Christmas. Maybe we'll do a Christmas show. Maybe we should do that instead.
Yeah, I feel like it's appropriate. Definitely.
Maybe we should do Christmas memories.
Yeah.
So that'll be next week, whatever we choose to do. Week after will be New Year's Eve, 31st of December, and we've got one we're going to do about goals. So we'll talk about this year and the things we've achieved and the things we want to achieve next year. That'll be quite a good show. I've got some stuff prepared for that. That'll be quite a good one.
You don't have to comment as well, but like you say, we like a bit of interaction with the podcast if there are any listeners. So if you want to talk about your goals or you want any advice from us or anything whatsoever,
or any questions,
any questions you've got, like you say, they're always welcomed. Like we're here to help as much as we're here to help each other as we do this.
And then there'll be one last podcast on, I guess, what's the week after New Year's Eve? Is that the 6th, 7th of January?
Yeah, in the new year.
And that'll basically just be. I mean, we'll record some new stuff for it, but a lot of it will be kind of archive clips of the previous 7 shows put together. To give us a little bit of a break, and it'll kind of just round the series up, and it'll be kind of what we've learned on our series together, talking about various topics. So it'll be kind of a.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, so kind of like analyze everything.
Yeah, do you know like when you used to get like omnibuses on TV where they used to put like 6 episodes of EastEnders into one block and you could watch it all in one?
Kind of like repeatedly.
Doctor Who used to do it, although apparently they're not allowed to talk about Doctor Who on this podcast anymore. But, it'll be kind of an omnibus of just a load of clips spliced together, and we'll have news stuff as well. We'll have us in between the clips talking about what do you think about when Sonny said that. Do you still agree with that, or
probably not if it's from Sonny? I'm joking now. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, so join us next week when we'll have our last regular show of the year. Have a lovely week, everyone.
Yes, have a lovely week. Take care, everyone.
And do turkey wraps contain turkey?
They do not.
It's an in-joke. Nobody's going to know that.